You shoot any of us, the voice behind me said calmly, and she dies. It's that simple. Dominic froze. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw something in his eyes I never thought I would see. Pure fear. No, he said, his voice cracking. Don't hurt her, please. Please? The man chuckled. The great Dominic Caruso, begging, that's new. I'll do anything, Dominic said, his gun lowering slightly. Anything, just don't hurt her. Tears were streaming down my face. I wanted to scream at him not to do this, not to surrender, but the gun to my head kept me silent with terror. Drop the gun, the man ordered. Dominic hesitated, his eyes meeting mine. In that look, I saw everything he felt. Love, regret, desperation. He dropped the gun. Dominic, no! I finally screamed, the words coming out as a sob. But it was too late. The moment his weapon hit the floor, the men swarmed him again. This time, he didn't fight back. Not while he was looking at me. Not while the gun was still at my head. They forced him to his knees, his hands brutally tied behind his back. Take a good look, Caruso, their leader said, moving to stand in front of Dominic. Look what your arrogance has cost you. Your property destroyed, your men dead, and her. He gestured to me. She's going to pay for every offense you've committed against our family. Touch her, and I will hunt every last one of you down, Dominic vowed, his voice low but filled with a deadly promise. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, I will find every one of you and make you beg for death. Brave words from a man on his knees, the leader laughed. But let's see how long that bravery lasts. He gave a signal, and the gun at my head was removed. For a second of pure relief, I thought maybe that meant they would let me go. Then a hand grabbed my hair, yanking my head back brutally. No, Dominic shouted, struggling to get up but being beaten back to the floor. Look at her, the leader ordered Dominic, turning my face so he could see. Look closely, because this is the last time you'll see her in one piece. The terror that shot through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was absolute, paralyzing, but then, miraculously, the sound of sirens exploded in the night. Multiple sirens, getting louder, closer. What? The leader spun around, his expression shifting from triumph to alarm. I said you were outnumbered, Dominic said. And even bleeding, even on his knees, there was a ghost of a smile on his face. But I wasn't talking about my numbers. The sirens became deafening, followed by shouting outside, more gunfire, and then authoritative voices yelling commands. In the ensuing chaos, the man holding me let go, and I fell to the floor in a heap. Men scattered in every direction. Some tried to fight, others tried to flee, but there was no escape. Within minutes, the house was swarming with police and Dominic's men, armed, organized men who quickly subdued the intruders. I crawled to Dominic, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the ropes on his wrists. Someone, Marco, I realized, helped me, slicing the cords with a knife. The moment he was free, Dominic pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. Are you okay? He said urgently, his hands running over my body, checking for injuries. Did they hurt you? No, I managed to say, my body racked with tremors. I'm fine. But you? I'm fine, he insisted, though the blood on his face said otherwise. I protected you. That's all that matters. Marco appeared at our side. Boss, we have to get her out of here. Now, while we still can. Dominic nodded, already helping me to my feet. To the safe house. Mobilize everyone. No one sleeps until we know who else was involved. And them? Marco gestured to the men being handcuffed by the police. Let them rot, Dominic said coldly. But find out who sent them. I want names. All of them. He guided me outside, his arm firmly around my waist. The scene on the lawn was surreal. Police cars everywhere, their lights flashing red and blue in the darkness. Dominic's men patrolling the perimeter. And bodies, not many, but enough to make me feel sick. Don't look, Dominic murmured, covering my eyes with his hand as he led me to a waiting car. We got into the back together. The moment the door shut, I began to shake uncontrollably, all the night's adrenaline finally crashing down on me. Hey, Dominic pulled me into his arms again, his hand stroking my hair. It's over. You're safe now. You said you love me. I said through my tears, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. He tensed for a moment, then pulled back to look me in the eye. I did, he confirmed, his voice raw. And it was true. It is true. I love you too, I managed to say, even as my voice trembled. I love you so much it hurts. I thought I was going to lose you tonight. I thought they were going to— Shh. He silenced me, kissing my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. They didn't. We're alive. We're together. That's all that matters. But even as he held me, even as he whispered promises of safety, I could see in his eyes that something had changed. Tonight had revealed just how vulnerable my presence in his life made him. And I didn't know if our love would be strong enough to survive what came next. The safe house was an anonymous apartment in Queens, a world away from the luxury I had grown accustomed to over the past few months. It was functional, clean, but utterly impersonal, like a generic hotel room where nothing suggested anyone actually lived there. It was 4 in the morning when we finally arrived. Marco and 3 other men had escorted us, doing a full sweep of the apartment before letting us inside. Then they took up strategic positions, 1 in the hall, 2 downstairs, Marco in the living room. Do you need anything? Marco asked, his eyes tired but vigilant. Privacy, Dominic answered, simply guiding me into the bedroom and shutting the door. We stood in silence for a long moment, just looking at each other. Now, under the harsh light of the apartment, I could really see the damage. Dominic had a deep cut over his eyebrow that had stopped bleeding but needed stitches. His face was swollen on one side, his lower lip split. Bruises were beginning to blossom on his neck and arms. You need to go to a hospital, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I've already called a private doctor. He'll be here in a few hours. Dominic, Isabella, please, he cut in, his voice weary. I can't go to a hospital, too many questions. And now with you, I can't risk any exposure. I should have argued, but I was too exhausted. Instead, I took his hand and led him to the bathroom. I found a first aid kit under the sink, obviously planted there for emergencies, and began to gently clean his wounds. He was quiet as I worked, his eyes closed, his jaw tightening every time I touched a particularly tender area. There was an intimacy to the moment, more intimate in a way than any of our previous encounters. I was seeing every scar on his body, every mark of a violent life he tried to hide from me. How many times have you done this? I asked softly, dabbing a clean piece of gauze at the cut on his forehead. Done what? Had to run, hide, patch yourself up from this. He opened his eyes, meeting mine in the mirror in front of us. More than I'd like to admit. And you still choose this life. It's not a choice when it's all you've ever known, he said, his voice laced with a sadness he rarely showed. I was born into this. My father was in it. My grandfather. It's the Caruso legacy. But it doesn't have to be, I argued, finishing with his wounds and turning to face him. You could leave, start over. He let out a bitter laugh. You don't just leave this life, Isabella. I told you that. So what? We live like this forever, running, hiding, always looking over our shoulders? I don't know, he admitted, and the brutal honesty in his voice hurt more than any lie could. But I know I almost lost you tonight. And that feeling, that was worse than anything I've ever felt before. His hands found my waist, pulling me between his legs as he remained seated on the edge of the tub. He rested his forehead against my stomach, his arms wrapping around me as if I might disappear at any moment. I can't lose you, he murmured against my skin. Not now that I've found you. My fingers tangled in his hair, holding him to me. Then don't lose me. Fight for us. I am fighting, he said, lifting his face to look at me. But what if fighting isn't enough? What if just being near me puts you in constant danger? Then we'll face the danger together, I answered with a conviction I didn't know I had. I chose you, Dominic, knowing the risks, knowing what it meant, and I keep choosing you. He pulled me into a kiss, gentle this time, almost reverent. When we broke apart, there were tears in his eyes that he quickly blinked away. You're insane, he whispered. For you, always. We left the bathroom and lay down on the bed, still fully clothed, too tired to do more than just hold each other, but sleep didn't come easily. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow made me clutch Dominic tighter. I can hear you thinking, he murmured in the dark, his fingers tracing patterns on my back. How do you do it? I asked softly. Live with this constant fear? You learn not to feel, he said. You numb yourself, build walls, keep your distance from anyone who might care. It's easier that way. But you didn't do that with me. No, he admitted. I tried, but you walked through every defense I built, and now I don't know how to go back. Don't go back, I said, turning to face him in the dark. Don't shut me out, Dominic, promise me. I promise to try, was all he said, and I had to accept it. We finally fell asleep as the sun began to rise, exhausted and entwined, seeking comfort in each other's presence. I woke up alone. For a moment of pure panic, I thought he had left me, but then I heard muffled voices from the living room, Dominic speaking in Italian again, his tone low but intense. I got up, pulling on one of his shirts I found in a drawer, and padded to the door. Through the crack, I could see Dominic and Marco sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread between them. The Rossy family is behind this, Marco was saying. They wanted to send a message about the port territories. So they invade my private property, Paul? Dominic replied, his voice glacial. They threaten the woman I love? That's not sending a message, that's war. It's what they want, Marco argued. They want to provoke you into overreacting, to make you look unstable to the other families. And you suggest I do nothing. I suggest we be calculated, precise, show strength but not madness. There was a long silence. Then Dominic sighed heavily. What about Isabella? She needs to stay hidden, for a few weeks at least until this blows over. She has a job, a life. Which means nothing if she's dead, Marco said coldly. I heard Dominic slam something on the table in frustration. How did I let this happen? How was I stupid enough to bring her into this? Because you're human, Marco replied, his voice softening. And because you deserve happiness as much as anyone. Not at this price. I couldn't listen anymore. I opened the door and walked into the room. Both men turned, startled. Isabella, Dominic was on his feet instantly. You should be resting. And you should be including me in conversations about my own life, I shot back, crossing my arms. Marco cleared his throat. I'll give you two a minute. He left, quietly shutting the door behind him. How much did you hear? Dominic asked, his expression carefully neutral. Enough to know you're planning on hiding me away like I'm a child who needs protecting. You do need protecting, he said firmly. Isabella, you didn't see what I saw last night. The brutality, the cruelty. I was there, I cut in. I felt the gun against my head. I saw you on the floor, bleeding. I don't need protection from knowledge, Dominic. I need honesty. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Fine, honesty. You want honesty? Here it is. They know about you now. They all know. And as long as you're with me, you are a target. For anyone who wants to hurt me, weaken me, destroy me. So what do you want, for me to leave? I want to keep you alive, he exploded, his voice rising for the first time. I want you to have the life you deserve, away from this madness. I want... His voice broke, and he turned away, his hands pressing against the kitchen counter. I want you to be happy, and you'll never be happy with me. I walked over to him, placing a hand on his back. I could feel the tension in every muscle. You don't get to decide what makes me happy, I said softly. I do, and I choose you, always. Even if it means living like this, in hiding, in fear, even then. He turned then, and the anguish in his eyes broke my heart. I don't know if I can live with that responsibility. If something happens to you because of me, nothing is going to happen, I insisted, because you're going to protect me, and I'm going to trust you. That's how this works. It's that simple for you? Love is never simple, I replied, reaching for his face, my thumbs tracing the bruises there. But it's worth fighting for. You taught me that. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. You deserve better than me. You deserve better than this life, I countered. But here we are. He laughed then, a short, humorless laugh. What a pair we make. The perfect pair, I corrected, smiling in spite of everything. He opened his eyes, and for the first time since last night, I saw something other than pain and worry. I saw hope. "You're really not going to give up on me, are you?" he asked. "Never." He kissed me then, deeply, desperately, as if trying to convince himself that I was real, that this moment was real. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead on mine. "Then here's the plan," he said, his voice firmer now. "You stay here for 1 week, just 1 week, while I handle the Rossys, quietly, decisively, and then—" He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "And then we disappear." Disappear? For a while, a few months maybe, away from here, away from all of it. I have properties overseas, places where we can just be. And your work, your responsibilities? Marco can handle it. He's more than capable. You would really do that? Leave everything? For you, he said, his eyes intense on mine. I'd do anything. My heart soared, but a part of me was still hesitant. And after, when we come back, we figure it out, he said, together. But first, I need to know that you're safe, and for that to happen, I need to deal with the Rossys. How? His expression darkened, and I saw the other side of him, the dangerous, calculated side. Leave that to me. Dominic, Isabella, please, he cut in, his voice softening. Let me do what I have to do. Let me protect you. It's the only thing I can control right now. I wanted to argue, but I saw the resolve in his eyes. He needed this, needed to feel like he had some control over the situation. 1 week, I finally agreed. But you keep me informed. No secrets. No secrets, he promised. The next few days were strange. Dominic would leave during the day, never saying exactly where, but I could guess, and return at night, always more tired, always more tense. Marco brought occasional updates, and though he tried to shield me from the details, I could piece together that things were escalating out there. Sarah called constantly, worried sick about my sudden absence from work. I spun a story about a family emergency, hating every lie but knowing it was necessary. Are you okay? She asked during our last call, her voice thick with concern. Bella, you know you can trust me, right? I know, I answered, my voice shaky, and I promise, when I can explain, I will. But for now, just trust me, I'm okay. Promise? Promise. But that promise felt emptier with each passing day. Because while I was physically safe, emotionally, I was falling apart. Watching Dominic tear himself apart, trying to protect me, seeing the guilt eat him alive, knowing that our happiness had caused this much chaos. It was almost too much to bear. On the 5th night, Dominic came home late, clearly exhausted. He collapsed on the sofa next to me, pulling me into his arms without a word. Is it over? I asked softly. Almost, he murmured against my hair. 1 more day, maybe 2. And then we leave, far away, to start again. Do you really believe that? That we can just start again? He was silent for a long moment. I have to because the alternative. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I understood perfectly. The alternative was losing each other, and neither of us was ready for that. The 8th day dawned with a strange quiet. I woke up alone again, but this time, there were no voices in the living room. Just stillness. I sat up quickly, my heart already thrumming with an irrational worry. Dominic was on the apartment's small balcony, looking out at the still sleeping city. He was wearing only pajama pants, and I could see the bruises on his back beginning to fade to yellow. Signs of healing, but also reminders of what we'd endured. You didn't sleep, I said softly, coming up behind him and wrapping my arms around his waist. Couldn't, he admitted, covering my hands with his. Kept thinking about everything that could have gone wrong, everything that still could. But it didn't. We're here, together. He turned in my arms, his eyes studying my face as if memorizing every detail. It's over, Isabella. My heart leaped. The Rossys? We came to an understanding, he said carefully. They've backed down, officially, with witnesses. It's on record with the other families. And what did it cost, I asked, knowing him well enough to know nothing came for free in his world. Territories, influence, money, he paused. My pride. Dominic, But it was worth it, he interrupted, his hands cupping my face. Every cent, every concession, every piece of power I gave up. It was all worth it if it means you're safe. Tears stung my eyes. You didn't have to do that. I did, because I realized something these past few days. He took a deep breath as if steeling himself for something he'd been thinking about for a long time. I'm tired, Isabella. I'm tired of this life, of the politics, the constant violence, of never knowing if I'll see tomorrow. And more than anything, I'm tired of not being able to just be me. Who are you? I asked softly, without all of this. I don't know, he admitted, and the vulnerability in his eyes broke my heart. It's been so long since I've been anything but Dominic Caruso, head of the family. I don't know who I am as just Dominic. Then let's find out, I encouraged, pressing my hands to his chest. We can find out together. He kissed me then, gently, like a promise. When we pulled away, there was resolve in his eyes. Marco is taking over, he said. Not permanently, but for now. A year, maybe longer. Long enough for me to figure out who I am outside of this life. And he hesitated, if you still want me after you've seen me without all the power and influence. I don't love you for your power, I cut in firmly. I love you, for the man who plays guitar and sings when he thinks no one is listening, who remembers how I take my coffee, who looks at me like I'm the only person in the world who matters. You are, he said simply. You're the only one who matters. 3 days later, we were on a private jet bound for Tuscany. Dominic owned a property there, an old renovated villa nestled among vineyards, far from everything and everyone. He said it was a place his grandfather had bought before everything became complicated, a refuge the Caruso family had kept as a closely guarded secret. No one knows about this place, he told me as we watched the Italian hills roll by from the window of the car that picked us up. Not even the other families. It's just mine. The estate was breathtaking, stone walls covered in ivy, ancient olive trees dotting the landscape, and a view that stretched for miles over golden fields and deep blue sky. It's perfect, I breathed, stepping out of the car and turning slowly to take it all in. Dominic stood beside me, his hands in his pockets, a small smile on his lips as he watched me. I'm glad you like it. It's going to be home for the next few months. The first days were an adjustment, learning to live without constant security, without urgent phone calls, without the weight of responsibility hanging over every moment. It was strange, almost uncomfortable, to see Dominic so relaxed. But it was also beautiful. We spent our days exploring the property, cooking simple meals together, reading under the olive trees. At night, we sat on the terrace with local wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and pinks. This feels like a dream, I remarked one evening, my head resting on Dominic's shoulder as the sky darkened. If it is, don't wake me up, he murmured, kissing my hair. It was in that quiet, in that stolen peace, that I truly began to know Dominic. Not the mob boss, not the dangerous man who commanded loyalty and fear in equal measure, but just Dominic. I learned that he loved to cook, especially dishes his grandmother had taught him as a child. That he had a dry sense of humor that often caught me off guard, that he had occasional nightmares he wouldn't talk about, but that I learned to soothe just by holding him until he fell back asleep. And he learned me too. My fears, my dreams, the insecurities I kept so carefully hidden from everyone else. Here, in this place between two lives, we didn't need masks. What do you want to do when we go back? He asked one morning as we had breakfast in the sun-drenched kitchen. I had thought about it. A lot. I want to finish law school, not to work for some stuffy firm, but to make a difference. Family law, maybe, or victim advocacy. He smiled. You'd be amazing at that. And you, I asked? What does Dominic Caruso do when he's not running a crime family? He was thoughtful for a moment. I always wanted to build things, restore old buildings, preserve history. There's so much beauty in architecture that's being forgotten. Then do it, I encouraged. When we go back, start. Is it possible, Juan? He asked, and there was such a fragile hope in his voice that my heart clenched. To really start over? It's possible, I assured him, taking his hand. It won't be easy, but it's possible. The months passed in a dreamlike haze, We visited small towns, hiked through vineyards, got lost in Florence admiring art that had survived for centuries. And slowly, gradually, I watched Dominic transform. The lines of tension that had always creased his face softened. He laughed more easily, he slept better. And while there were still moments, rare calls from Marco, news from home that brought that familiar hardness back to his eyes, they became fewer and farther between. I could live like this forever, Potifar, he said one night, as we danced slowly on the terrace under the stars, with no music but the wind in the trees. Then let's, I replied. Maybe not here, exactly, but we can have this. We can build this. You really believe that? I believe in us, I said simply. It was in our 6th week in Italy that the past finally caught up. Marco called, his voice tense over the phone. Boss, we have a problem. Antonio Rossy is making noise again, saying the deal wasn't permanent. That when you come back, I'm not coming back, Dominic interrupted calmly, his eyes meeting mine from across the room. Not like that. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? I mean, I'm out, Marco. Officially, permanently. You're taking over, completely. Dominic, you can't just… It's already done, Dominic said with finality. I have lawyers drawing up the papers. Everything I legally own will be divided. Half to the family, half to charities of my choice. I keep the villa here, a personal account, and my freedom. They'll never accept it. The other families, they can accept it or not. It's not my problem anymore. Dominic paused, his voice softening. You're my brother, Marco, the closest thing I have, and I trust you more than I've ever trusted anyone. But I'm finished. I found something worth more than power or territory, and I'm not letting it go. I heard Marco sigh heavily. Is she really that important? Dominic looked at me, and the love in his eyes was so intense it took my breath away. She's everything. Then I'll handle things here, Marco finally said. But Dominic, be careful. Even on the outside, you still have enemies. I know, that's why we're starting somewhere else, out of sight. After he hung up, Dominic came to me, kneeling where I sat on the veranda. You heard, he said, and it wasn't a question. I heard. Dominic, are you sure? Giving up everything? It's not giving up if I'm gaining something better, he interrupted, taking my hands. Isabella, I have spent 35 years living in the dark, making choices because they were expected of me, not because they were what I wanted. But then you stumbled into my life with that stupid box, and for the first time, I saw light. Tears were streaming down my face. This could have been a lot easier if you'd just asked me out normally. He laughed, wiping my tears away with his thumbs. Where's the fun in that? Then his expression turned serious. But now I want to do things right, the way they should be. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and my heart stopped. Isabella Moretti, he began, his voice thick with emotion. You made me want to be a better man. You showed me there's a life beyond the one I knew, and I want to spend every day I have left, proving I'm worthy of the love you've given me. He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring, an emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. Marry me, not as a mob boss, but as just Dominic, just as the man who loves you more than life itself. Yes, I sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on my finger, then pulled me into a kiss that promised all the tomorrows we would build together. 6 months later. The little house on the coast of Portugal was small but perfect. White walls that reflected the sun, the constant sound of the ocean, a small garden where we grew herbs and vegetables. Dominic was in the office we'd converted from a spare bedroom, working on restoration plans for a historic building in Lisbon. He'd started his own architectural consulting firm, focusing on preservation. It was hard work, and he made a fraction of what he used to, but I had never seen him happier. I was finishing my last year of law school online, with plans to take the Portuguese bar exam. I already had an internship lined up with an NGO that worked with victims of domestic violence. Bella, Dominic called from the office. You need to see this. I walked in to find him staring at his laptop, a wide grin on his face. What is it? Marco just sent this. The final papers went through. Officially, legally, I have no more ties to the family. Is it really over then? It's a new beginning, he corrected, pulling me onto his lap. His hand went automatically to my still flat stomach, where our 6-week-old secret was growing. For all of us. Covering his hand with mine, I smiled. I still can't believe we're going to be parents. Scared? I asked, seeing the familiar worry in his eyes. Terrified, he admitted, but also hopeful. This baby will grow up in a house filled with love, away from the violence. They'll have choices I never had, and they'll have you for a mother, which means they'll have everything. And you for a father, I added, who will love them unconditionally and teach them that it's possible to change, to grow, to start over. We really did it, didn't we? He asked in wonder. Against all odds, we made it. We made it, I agreed, kissing him softly. That night, we sat on our small porch, watching the sun set over the ocean. The life we'd built wasn't perfect. There were still nights when Dominic woke up from nightmares, still moments when I worried the past would come back. But it was ours, built on honest choices and hard-won love. And for the first time since we met in that dark hallway so long ago, we weren't running from the past or hiding from the present. We were just living, loving, being. Any regrets? I asked Dominic as the sun disappeared below the horizon. He thought for a long moment, then pulled me closer. Not a single one. This life, our life, is worth more than all the power I left behind. Even on the hard days? Especially on the hard days, he said, kissing my temple. Because on the hard days, I have you, and that makes everything bearable. As the stars began to appear, we went inside together, locking the door not out of fear, but out of hope. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own joys, but we would face them together, and that, in the end, was all that mattered. Love, trust, a new beginning, and the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come.